Part 3. 10 minutes later, Ralph was standing at the front of the Rite Aid pharmacy and looking at a sign which hung on chains from the ceiling. Feel better at Rite Aid, and it said, seeming to suggest that feeling better was a goal attainable by any reasonable, hard-working consumer. Ralph had his doubts about that. This, Ralph decided, was retail drug dealing on a grand scale. It made the Rexall, where he usually traded, look like a tenement apartment in comparison. The fluorescent lit aisle seemed as long as bowling alleys and displayed everything from toaster ovens to jigsaw puzzles. After a little study, Ralph decided aisle 3 contained most of the patent medicines and was probably his best bet. He made his way slowly through the area marked stomach remedies, sojourned briefly in the kingdom of analgesics, and quickly crossed the land of laxatives. And there, between laxatives and decongestants, he stopped. This is it, folks. My last shot. After this, there's only Dr. Litchfield, and if he suggests honeycomb or drinking chamomile tea, I'll probably snap, and it'll take both nurses and the receptionist to pull me off his ass. Sleeping aids, the sign over this section of aisle 3 read. Ralph, never much of a patent medicine user, he would otherwise have arrived here much sooner, no doubt. Didn't know exactly what he'd expected, but it surely had not been this wild. Almost indecent profusion of products. His eyes slipped across the boxes, a majority were soothing blue, reading the names. Most of them seemed strange and slightly ominous. Compost, Nitol, Sleepinol, Zeopower, Sominex, Sleepinx, Drowsy. There was even a generic brand. You have got to be kidding, he thought. None of these things are going to work for you. It's time to quit fucking around. Don't you know that when you start to see colored footprints on the sidewalk, it's time to quit fucking around and go to the doctor? But on the heels of this, he heard Dr. Litchfield heard him so clearly, it was as if a tape recorder had turned on in the middle of his head. Your wife is suffering from tension headaches, Ralph. Unpleasant and painful, but not life-threatening. I think we can take care of the problem. Unpleasant and painful, but not life-threatening. Yes, right, that's what the man said. And then he reached for his prescription pad and ran out the order for the first bunch of useless pills while the tiny clump of alien cells in Carolyn's head continued to send out its microburst of destruction. And maybe Dr. Jamal had been right. Maybe it was too late even then. But maybe Jamal was full of shit. Maybe Jamal was just a stranger in a strange land trying to get along, trying not to make waves. Maybe this and maybe that. Ralph didn't know for sure, and never would. All he really knew was that Litchfield hadn't been around when the final 2 tasks of their marriage had been set before them. Her job to die, and his job to watch her do it. Is that what I want to do? Go to Litchfield and watch him reach for his prescription pad again? Maybe this time it would work, he argued too, with himself. At the same time, his hand stole out, seemingly on his own volition, and took a box of Sleepinx from the shelf. He turned it over, held it slightly away from his eyes so he could read the small print on the side label, and ran his eye slowly down the list of active ingredients. He had no idea of how to pronounce most of the jaw-breaking words, and even less of what they were or how they were supposed to help you sleep. Yes, he answered the voice. Maybe this time it would work. But maybe the real answer would be just to find another help you? A voice asked from directly behind Ralph's shoulder. He was in the act of returning the box of Sleepinx to its place, meaning to take something that sounded a little less like a sinister drug in a Robin Cook novel when the voice spoke. Ralph jumped and knocked a dozen assorted boxes of synthetic sleep onto the floor. He was in the act of returning the box of... Wait. Oh, sorry. Clumsy, Ralph said and looked over his shoulder. Not at all. My fault entirely. And before Ralph could do more than pick up 2 boxes of Sleepinx and 1 box of drowsy gel capsules, the man in the white smock who had spoken to him had swept up the rest and was redistributing them with the speed of a riverboat gambler dealing a hand of poker. Now, according to the gold ID bar pinned to his breast, this was Joe Weiser, Rite Aid pharmacist. Ralph's initial response annoyance at being disturbed while having a deep and meaningful conversation with himself was being replaced with guarded interest. Well, I don't know, he said, and gestured to the array of sleeping potions. Do any of these actually work? Weiser's grin widened. He was a tall, middle-aged man with fair skin and thinning brown hair, which he parted in the middle. He stuck out his hand, and Ralph had barely begun the polite reciprocatory gesture with his own hand was swallowed. I'm Joe, the pharmacist said, and tapped the gold tunic pin with his free hand. I used to be Joe Wise, but now I'm older and wiser. This was almost certainly an ancient joke, but it had lost none of its savor for Joe Wise, who laughed uproariously. Ralph smiled a polite smile with just the smallest touch of anxiety around the edges. The hand which had enfolded his was clearly a strong one, and he was afraid if the pharmacist squeezed hard, his hand might finish the day in a cast. He found himself wishing, at least momentarily, that he'd taken his problem to Paul Dargan downtown after all. The wiser gave his hand 2 energetic pumps and let go. I'm Ralph Roberts. Nice to meet you, Joe Weiser. Mutual. Now, concerning the efficacy of these fine products, let me answer your question with one of my own. To wit, does a bear shit in a telephone booth? Ralph burst out laughing. Rarely, I think, he said when he could say anything again. Correct, and I rest my case. Weiser glanced at the sleeping aids, all well done in shades of blue. Thank God I'm a pharmacist and not a salesman, Mr. Roberts. I'd start trying to peddle stuff door to door. Are you an insomniac? I'm asking partly because you're investigating the sleeping aids, but mostly because you have that lean and hollow-eyed look. Ralph said, Mr. Weiser, I'd be the happiest man on earth if I could get 5 hours. Sleep some night, and I'd settle for 4. How long has this been going on, Mr. Roberts, or do you prefer Ralph? Ralph swing. Good, and I'm Joe. It started in April, I think, a month or 6 weeks after my wife died anyway. Gee, I'm sorry to hear you lost your wife. My sympathies. Thank you, Ralph said, then repeated the old formula. I missed her a lot, but I was glad when her suffering was over. Except now you're suffering. For, let's see, Weiser kind of quickly on his big fingers, going on half a year now. Joe finally found himself fascinated by those fingers. No jet contrast this time, but the tip of each one appeared to be wrapped in a bright silvery haze. Like tinfoil, you could somehow look right through. He suddenly found himself thinking of Carolyn again, and remembering the phantom smells she had sometimes complained of last fall: cloves, sewage, burning ham. Maybe this was the male equivalent, and the onset of his own brain tumor had been signaled not by headaches, but by insomnia. Self-diagnosis is a fool's game, so why don't you just quit it? He moved his eyes resolutely back to Weiser's big, pleasant face. No silvery haze there, not so much as a hint of haze. He was almost sure of it. That's right, he said, going on half a year. It seems longer. A lot longer, actually. Any noticeable pattern? There usually is. Do you toss and turn before you go to sleep, or I'm a premature waker? Weiser's eyebrows went up, and read a book or 3 about the problem, too, I deduce. If Litchfield had made a remark of this sort, Ralph would have read condescension from it. From Joe Weiser, he sensed not concentration, but genuine admiration. I read what the library had, but there wasn't much, and none of it has helped much. Ralph paused and added, the truth is, none of it has helped at all. Well, let me tell you what I know on the subject, and you just kind of flop your hand when I start heading into territory you've already explained. Who's your doctor, by the way? Literal. And you usually treat at where? The People's Drug out in the mall, the Rexall downtown? The Rexall. You're incognito today, I take it. Ralph blushed and grinned. Yeah, something like that. And I don't need to ask if you've been to see Litchfield about your problem. If you had, you wouldn't be exploring the wonderful world of patent medicines. Is that what these are? Patent medicines? Put it this way, I'd feel a hell of a lot more comfortable selling most of the scrap off the back of a big red wagon with fancy yellow wheels. Ralph laughed, and the bright silvery cloud, which had been gathering in front of Joe Weiser's tunic, blew away when he did. That kind of salesmanship I might be able to get into, Weiser said with a misty little grin. I'd get a sweet little honey bun to do a dance in a sequined bra and a pair of harem pants. Call her Little Egypt, like in that old Coaster song. She'd be my warm-up act. Plus, I'd have a banjo picker. In my experience, there's nothing like a good dose of banjo music to put people in the buying mood. Weiser looked off past the laxatives and the analgesics, enjoying the Scotty daydream. Then looked back at Ralph again. For a premature waker like you, Ralph, this stuff's entirely useless. You'd be better off with a shot at booze, or one of those wave machines they sell through the catalogs. And looking at you, I guess you probably tried them both. Yes, along with about two other old-timer tested home remedies. Ralph laughed again. He was coming to like this guy a lot. Try 4 dozen and you'll be in the ballpark. Well, you're an industrious bugger, I'll give you that, Weiser said and waved a hand at the blue boxes. These things are nothing but antihistamines. Essentially, they're trading on a side effect. Antihistamines make people sleepy. Check out a box of contracts or Benadryl down there in decongestants, and I'll say you shouldn't take it if you're going to be driving or operating heavy machinery. For people who suffer from occasional sleepiness, a Somnix every now and then may work. It gives them a nudge, but they wouldn't work for you in any case, because your problem isn't getting to sleep. It's staying asleep. Correct? Correct. Can I ask you a delicate question? Sure, I guess so. Do you have a problem with Dr. Litchfield regarding this? Maybe have some doubts about his ability to understand how really pissy your insomnia is making you feel? Yes, Ralph said gratefully. Do you think I should go see him? Try to explain that to him so he'll understand? To this question, Weiser would of course respond in the affirmative, and Ralph would finally make the call. And it should be Litchfield. He saw that now. It was madness to think of hooking up with a new doctor at this age. Can you tell Dr. Litchfield you're seeing things? Can you tell him about the blue marks you saw shooting up from the tips of Lois Chass's fingers, the fingerprints on the sidewalk, and the footprints in an Arthur Murray dance diagram? The silvery stuff around the tips of Joe Weiser's fingers? Are you really going to tell Litchfield that stuff? And if not, if you can't, why are you going to see him in the first place, no matter what this guy recommends? Weiser, however, surprised him by going in an entirely different direction. You still dreaming? Yes, quite a lot, in fact, considering that I'm down to about 3 hours sleep a night. Are they coherent dreams? Dreams that consist of perceivable events in some kind of narrative flow, no matter how kooky, or are they just jumbled images? Ralph remembered a dream he had the night before. He and Helen Deepno and Bill McGovern had been having a 3-sided game of frisbee in the middle of Harris Avenue. Helen had a pair of huge, clunky saddle shoes on her feet. McGovern was wearing a sweatshirt with a vodka on it, absolutely the best, the sweatshirt proclaimed. The frisbee had been bright red with fluorescent green stripes. Then Rosalie the dog showed up. The faded blue bandana someone had hung around her neck was flapping as she limped toward them. All at once she had leaped into the air, snatched her frisbee, and gone running off with it in her mouth. Ralph wanted to give chase, but Bill said, "Relax, Ralph. We're getting a whole case of them for Christmas." Ralph turned to him, intending to point out that Christmas was over 3 months away, and to ask what the hell they were going to do if they wanted to play frisbee between now and then. But before he could, the dream had either ended or had gone on to some other less vivid mind movie. If I understand what you're saying, Ralph replied, my dreams are coherent. Good. I also want to know if they're lucid dreams. Lucid dreams fulfill 2 requirements. First, you know you're dreaming, and second, you can often influence the course of the dream takes. You're more than just a passive observer. You're often unsure I have those 2. In fact, I seem to have a lot of them lately. I was just thinking of one I had last night, in it the stray dog I see on the street from time to time ran off with a frisbee some friends of mine and I went playing with. I was mad that she broke up the game, and I tried to make her drop the frisbee just by sending her the thought, sort of a telepathic command, you know? He added the small, embarrassed chuckle, but Weiser only nodded matter-of-factly. Did it work? Not this time, I said, but I think I have made that sort of thing work in other dreams, only I can't be sure because most of the dreams I have seem to fade away almost as soon as I wake up. That's the case with everyone, Weiser said. The brain treats most dreams as disposable matter, storing them out in extreme short-term memory. You know a lot about this, don't you? Insomnia interests me very much. I did 2 research papers on the link between dreams and sleep disorders when I was in college. Weiser glanced at his watch. It's my break time. Would you like to have a cup of coffee and a piece of apple pie with me? There's a place just 2 doors down, and the pie is fantastic. Sounds good, but maybe I'll settle for an orange soda. I've been trying to cut down on my coffee intake. Understandable, but completely useless. Weiser said cheerfully. Caffeine's not your problem, Ralph. No, I suppose not, but what is? To this point, Ralph had been quite successful in keeping the misery out of his voice, but now it crept back in. Weiser clapped him on the shoulder and looked at him kindly. That, he said, is what we're going to talk about. Come on.